Okay, our directions here say solve each equation below. That means we're going to isolate our variables. The goal for all 4 of these problems is to get the variable on one side of the equal sign by itself. To do that, we use inverse operations. So let's start with number 3. Number 3 says 53 equals 19 minus w. So we know we want to keep this w over here on the right-hand side because we want that w on one side of the equal sign by itself. So we need to move over this 19. This is a positive 19. So to move it over, we're going to subtract 19 from both sides of the equal sign. Alright, when we do that, we have 53 minus 19. Again, just use your calculator for that. Use Desmos, use a calculator. 53 minus 19 is equal to 34. So, on the left-hand side, we get 34 is equal to, these 19s cancel out, and we're left with negative w. Don't forget this negative sign. It's attached to the w. This is telling me that 34 is equal to negative 1 w. Remember that negative 1 is there, we just don't always write it. But sometimes it's helpful to write that. So now we can see, hey, I have negative 1 w, but I just want w by itself. So the inverse of multiplying by negative 1 is dividing by negative 1. So we're going to divide by negative 1 on both sides. When we do that, 34 divided by negative 1 is negative 34 equals, these negative 1s make a giant 1, so we're just left with w. And now we've solved our equation because we got w on one side of the equal sign by itself. Okay, let's do number 5 next, just because it's already over here and I don't have to move my calculator yet. So 5 says b plus 50 divided by negative 3 equals 95. So the first thing we want to do is get rid of this fraction, because sometimes the fractions look scarier than they are. So we want to get rid of them. To do that, we need to multiply both sides of the equation by our denominator here. Because see, this is b plus 50 divided by negative 3. The inverse, or the opposite of dividing by negative 3, is multiplying by negative 3. So we're going to multiply by negative 3 on both sides of the equal sign. So we're going to get negative 3 times, I'm going to put this in parentheses, my original quantity, b plus 50 over negative 3 equals negative 3 times 95. Okay, now you want to be careful. I have a negative 3 on the top and a negative 3 on the bottom. So right away, I'm going to just cancel them out. They cancel out. They make a big 1, they're gone. So then I'm left with b plus 50 equals, now I'm going to go to my calculator and do negative 3 times 95. And I get negative 285. So b plus 50 equals negative 285. Now I'm almost done. I need to get b by itself. So here we have b plus 50. To move the 50 over to the other side of the equation, we need to use an inverse operation. So the inverse of adding is subtracting. So we're going to subtract 50 from both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, these 50s go away. We're left with b equals, and then let's go on our calculator and do negative 285 minus 50 to get negative 335. And that is our final answer. We've isolated our variable and got it on one side of the equal sign by itself. Alright, let's do number 4. 2 over 7n plus 8 equals 2. Alright, this 2/7 n, we're going to leave that alone for now. We're not going to touch that fraction until it's the only thing on the left-hand side of my equal sign there. So this plus 8, to move it to the other side, we need to do the inverse of adding, which is subtracting. So we're going to subtract 8 from both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, these 8's cancel out. So we're left with 2 over 7n equals negative 6. And again, 2 minus 8, you can just do that in your calculator to get that negative 6. Now that this 2/7 n is by itself on one side of the equal sign, I can go ahead and get rid of that fraction. So this is 2 divided by 7 times n. To undo dividing by 7, we're going to multiply by 7 on both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, on the left, these 7's go away. They make a giant 1. So we're left with 2n equals, on your calculator, 7 times negative 6. Oops. You want to make sure you use the negative symbol for negative, not the subtraction. So 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. We are almost done. We have 2 times n equals negative 42. But we just want to know what n equals. So we're going to divide by 2 on both sides, because dividing by 2 is the inverse of multiplying by 2. Again, these 2's make a giant 1, so we just have 1n, which we can write as n, equals, on our calculator, negative 42 divided by 2 is negative 21. And that's our final answer. Again, you want to make sure that you're using your calculator here. Number 6, 40 minus c divided by 3 equals 23. So, again, let's not touch the fraction until we take this 40 and move it over to the other side. So let's start by just subtracting 40 from both sides of the equal sign. On the left, these 40's will cancel out, so we'll get negative c over 3 equals, on our calculator, let's do 23 minus 40 to get negative 17. Alright, so now we have a fraction here. To get rid of the fraction, we multiply both sides of the equation by the denominator. So we're going to have 3 times negative c over 3 equals negative 17 times 3. On the left, our 3's make a giant 1, so we're just left with negative c equals, again, let's check our calculator and do negative 17 times 3. So negative c equals negative 51. Now, we are almost done. We know what the opposite of c is, but we just want to know c. So again, remember, this is like negative 1c equals negative 51. We just don't always write that 1. But writing it, can help us solve the problem. If we have negative 1 times c, but we just want c, we need to divide by negative 1 on both sides. Here, the negative 1's make a giant 1, so we just get that c is equal to 51. Negative divided by negative is a positive, and now we've solved the equation.